Hello all, my name is Pilar Cano. I work for Armando Alvarez Group since 2004, and I have joined Agricultural Division nearly 9 years ago as sales coordinator. I will moderate this webinar for biodegradable crop support twine. First of all, I would like to thank you for joining us today, and I hope you will find it interesting and to cover your expectations. I will introduce speakers who will lead this webinar today. First one will be Trevor Wells. He began working for us in 2013, and in September 2019, last years ago, joined the agricultural team for US market. Afterwards, second speaking will be Miguel Bosquet. He joined our company 19 years ago, and 15 of them have been working into twine division within the agricultural sector. At present, he is our specialist and twine division manager in Armando Alvarez Group. About webinar procedure, questions and answer session will be done at the end of presentations, but participants can place questions from beginning. At the bottom of your screen, you have the Q&A button. You can place your questions there, and with pleasure, Miguel and Trevor will answer them at the end of their presentations. Also, I would like to remind you that you have available a chat in case needed, but Q&A should be done as explained before. Now, Trevor will start presentation. Thank you all for your attention. See you later. Bye.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be with you all today. My name is Trevor Wells. As Pilar mentioned, I'm located in the northeast of the United States. And today I'm going to be going over a little bit about sustainability and why it's important in plasticulture and agriculture in general. Then my colleague Miguel will be going over biodegradable plastics and in more detail, specifically crop support twine. The context is very important when speaking about agriculture and plasticulture in general, because we live in a growing world, and that presents challenges to everyone, especially in agriculture. Not only is it a growing world, but in many of the fastest growing populations, which are developing nations, these people are starting to consume more. And that presents challenges that can be exponential, because not only is it more mouths to feed, but they are consuming more. I've listed here a few sustainability goals from the United Nations, and I've listed them because in looking at many multinational corporations, they all reference these sustainability goals in their annual reports. They're quite simple. The three I've listed are to reduce waste, to report on sustainability, and also include sustainability in purchasing decisions. And that means that not only are they looking for not the cheapest product or an economical product or the most high quality product, but also it must be sustainable. So when the largest multinationals are starting to include this and look at this and report on this, it's important for everyone in the supply chain to keep this in mind. In agriculture and horticulture, there's no denying that plasticulture is extremely beneficial. It increases yields, reduces the use of water, pesticides, other chemicals. It's extremely beneficial, and it will help us in feeding an ever-growing world. With that said, there are some challenges with plasticulture. Many of them are related to waste management. Now, plastics are mostly recyclable and should be, but the reality is that is not always the case due to challenges regionally in having access to recycling centers, or the fact that it can be costly. So there's a piece of information here about the United States and how much agricultural plastic waste is produced each year. Some of that is being burned, some is going to landfills. In a perfect world, it would all be recycled, but that is just simply not the case. So that is why it's very important for the supply chain and manufacturers of plastics to start to offer solutions to the market for such problems. And here you can see some photos of tomato crop with crop support, and then the waste. The challenge with this is that there's vegetation tied up with the crop support twine at the end of the harvest, and it's difficult to separate. So in many cases, that's just going straight to a landfill. Miguel later will go into more detail about the option with biodegradable plastics. But in the supply chain, given the challenges with feeding a hungry world and the benefit of plastic culture, it's very important that we all work together in coming up with solutions for new products, compostable, biodegradable, the recycling of these products, and then improving waste management in general. Not only is it important in terms of being more effective and sustainable, but in the marketing of products from growers through the supply chain to the final end user, it's becoming ever more important to consumers. So if you're a grower, you're selling and marketing your products to someone who's going to sell it to a consumer who's more and more in tune with sustainability. And there are some interesting facts here about how that is going, especially in the United States. Many decisions are being driven by sustainability. People are willing to spend more money on sustainable products. And even more importantly, in the generation that's going to be the most important in terms of purchasing power from the next 10, 20 years, millennials are willing to spend more money and pay more attention to sustainable products. On the right, there are some logos of some associations that are becoming ever more popular in terms of agriculture and sustainability. At the end, you can reference these and look them up and see what they are about. So that being said, it's important for everyone in the supply chain to communicate about sustainability. Many of you, if you're a grower, you may actually already be doing actions that are sustainable, and that needs to be communicated. Why is this? Because things, subjects such as organic or food safety or non-GMO, 20 years ago were not so common, but now it's very, very commonplace in the market for people to be aware of these products and to differentiate between a standard or an organic product, for example. So it's important throughout the supply chain to communicate this, and that's to the end user, the consumer, to retailers who sell these products, and also throughout the supply chain. So that can be your grower and then the rest of the supply chain that leads into the grower. In order to communicate this, there need to be metrics. You need to come up with a plan to study your operations and be able to measure and communicate what in fact you are doing to be more sustainable. There are certification groups that can certify this and measure and help you, but you can also do this on your own. And communication nowadays with the internet is very easy. So perhaps you have some of these goals being met within your organizations, and it's about communicating them. So I've listed a few key performance indicators that can be used to start to measure ways that your company is being sustainable. And by communicating that, you're going to get to the end user and easier reach your sustainability goals. In the case of biodegradable twine, for example, so if you were growing and you used a truckload per se every year of twine to support your crops, if you were to convert that to a biodegradable product, you're diverting about 40,000 pounds of polypropylene from the waste cycle. That's something that I think would resonate very much with the consumers if you are able to do so, because 40,000 pounds of plastic is quite significant. And these are little ways that are quite easy to communicate on sustainability. Now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Miguel, who's going to go further into biodegradable plastics.
Hello, everybody. Many thanks, Trevor. First of all, I have probably the worst accent of the group, so very sorry for that, because like a mix of French and Spanish. Thanks for your understanding. So here we go. So biodegradable plastic, everybody knows, this is like general knowledge. We start from a raw material, okay? We transform it, this is our job, this is what we do. We manufacture a product for the agricultural production. And at the end, the farmers, the growers, have to manage his waste. Have two ways. He can do compost with, or he can send his plant to a treatment plant, and with the waste, do again a new raw material with a loss of value, and we start again the chains. Here you have 3 certification, okay? Because all the biodegradable plastic could be twine, could be mulch mainly, have a regulation. Okay, the most prestigious one is comes from Austria, TÜV, TÜV, and you have 3 kinds: the industrial compost, the home compost, and the biodegradable in soil. We will see after difference at what our group decided to work with. You have here 2 certification. Okay, the first one, the 13432, is for twine, and the 17033 is for mulch. Basically, it's just a requirement that the product must have to be considered biodegradable and biocompostable. So you have to use the correct raw material. You have to pass a test of biodegradability, one of disintegration, and finally the quality of the compost you get at the end of the process. Okay, so focusing on the tutor twine. I mean, the twine is used to support the plant during the growth. So the basic concept of a twine is tutoring. Okay, tutoring, it's a technique designed to support the growth of certain plants. When I say tomatoes, pepper, cucumber, eggplants, etc., to have different advantage. Increase air circulation among the foliage, raise the plant, avoiding that the flower and fruits are in contact with the soils, reducing incidence of fungal disease, avoiding staining the fruit during the growth, prevent damage from trampling during work, and increase the quality and production of the crop. I think it's an old technique. I mean, all the technical greenhouse are using this technique, and it's a massive use worldwide. Two ways to apply it: two tutoring systems. Okay, you have the classic one, it's the Dutch one. One is horizontal and vertical. Okay, when you use the twine. The other one is just vertical. Okay, it's depending of the crop. Okay, 2 techniques. Okay, so depending of the one system or other, you are using more twine or less twine. Okay, so at the end of the growth, the grower have several options. First, he can send his waste to a treatment plant. Okay, to receive a treatment, industrial composting treatment. We will see after in detail how it's made. He can use it by himself in his own installation. Okay, but to do that, he have to do a lot of job, a lot of work, because he have to separate by himself the twine from the plant, and have a special machine to crush the material and to do his own compost. So very few people are using this technique, at least here in Spain. And the third one is to send the product to cattle feeding. Okay, but with another problem, you already have the twine inside the plant. So the animal cannot eat twine. It's not recommended by the doctor. I mean, when you decide to send your material to a treatment plant, okay, so you have to pay for that. I'm using the example here of Spain. You have to pay for that, and here you have some number approximately of what the agriculture have to pay to recovering the product. Okay, at the end of the day, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of gas emission, and moving plant from a side for other side, and the presence of a tutor twine, polypropylene one, it's a very huge problem for the treatment plant. So how we know that is because we are just in the middle of the second concentration of greenhouse in the world. So you can imagine each season the volume of waste we have and have to be managed here, just over there. Just after this window, you have several plants of treatment to do this job. And really is talking with the treat plant, the waste treatment plant. They explain to us the very huge problems they have with twine inside the plant. And we start talking with us, and we start our project really in base of the opinion of this professional. So we don't, I mean, solution with, because it's most easy to say, okay, if polypropylene is like petrol, it's bad for society, you can use cotton or sisal or fiber, vegetable fiber 100%. Why people don't do that? Because from the Romans, they use sisal for the crop, okay? But the problem, we observe that the problem is the follow. When you use a 100% vegetable fiber, you can have problem of weakness, of strength, of the medical properties, first. Second, you have a worse control of the degradation process, because you never know when it's going to break the twine when you are using a twine like this. So if it's for your garden, it's not a big issue. But imagine you have 100 hectares of greenhouse and the twine is start breaking, so you have a big issue. So it's not able for a big process. Low availability, I mean, you don't, you have a year with more availability of product or less, and very high cost. I mean, this kind of fiber are very expensive. You have a simulation of cost per acre. We are talking about five times the price of PP. Okay, could be less depending on the country and many things, but the options you have to with a vegetable fiber 100% is it's too high. So with this situation, we start our development. So here a little bit short information of how works a plant of waste treatment here in Almeria. Okay, because when you live here in the field, you cannot imagine how they can manage thousands of tons of waste plant. Okay, so they receive the material, they identify if it's plant of tomatoes, if with pepper, or depending on the crop, they do a selection. They do a selection of soil who have twine inside or no twine. Okay, they start crushing it. Okay, and doing some piles with a different category or of quality they have. Okay, they use different parameter or technique to control that temperature, humidity, and they turn the material, and they add some water also to accelerate the process of degradation. Okay, it's a very heavy process, and with PP twine inside, believe me, it's very hard to manage that. Okay, so and at the end they do the sifting. Okay? With the sifting, this it's like the final process, and with the sifting, they determine what is available, what is suitable, sorry, for compost, what is not available for compost or uncompost material, and they separate it. And what is raffia? The raffia means the twine they get at the end with less than 20% of organic material. So this kind of product is not suitable for nothing, for raw material and compost. So like they lose efficiency. So Rayonvac, with all these elements and with this context, with a lot of discussion we had with all the actors, we decide to use our large experience in the sector to design a product using a fibrillation process, using all knowledge, using colors, different length, to offer to the market a product biocompostable, biodegradable and compostable at the same time, in order to give a solution of the plant waste management, because the situation, believe me, the situation of the plant are very complicated, and this kind of solution help a lot the plant to manage the waste. So it's good for, if it's good for them, it's good for everybody. So here, some picture, okay, of the product. We do some, it's a long development. We started more than 2 years ago to get a product suitable for the crop, secure for the growers. So here you have some example. We made it in Almeria for sure. Over here you can see inside of a technological greenhouse in Almeria using the product. So the product, very important, have for sure certification. I mean, you can find in internet a lot of solution, okay? But you always have to check if the solution you are offering to you have the proper certification, okay? It's a key point. We have the EN 13432, okay? Remember what we saw before, its manufacturer is a totally compostable biopolymers, okay? We estimate the life of the product of 1 season, similar with our polypropylene twine, and is specially designed to be removed at the end of the growth to a plant waste. Okay, and is suitable for industrial composting, only for industrial composting in treatment plants. Here you have the technical data sheet, okay, of the product. So we tried to offer really a product very similar in property to a polypropylene twine. And this is one of the key points, because you cannot ask to growers who need efficiency to be green, paying more for a product, and have trouble with the product. I mean, the security of the growth is the first thing, the first point. First point. Without security, we cannot have business. So the property are very similar to a polypropylene one. Okay, we made it in 5 kilo. Here you have the detail. We start with 2 lengths, but we are able to do the lengths the market require. You know, so but we start with the 2 most popular here in our area. Here you have the presentation of the product. Here's a presentation in skid, in pallet. Here you can see different plant, different greenhouse, right? Because we during the trial test, we trace different farm, different growth, and different situation to be sure to give the security for the product. Here you have other field tests, different growth, you know, with hook, and this is all. Many thanks to be here. I see a lot of friends here. I'm very happy to see you and to talk about this central issue, because it's for the future of the planet at the end of the day, and therefore the future of our society. So many thanks.
Thank you, Miguel and Trevor, for sharing with us your knowledge, and your presentation was very good. And now is the Q&A time. So if any of you are interested, you can place your questions. At the bottom of the screen, you can see a Q&A button. You can press there and add your questions. We already have 4. So now we are going to start with the answers. Thank you.
Hello again. First question. What is the difference between biodegradable and biocompostable? And also, what is the difference between home compost and industrial compost? Thanks. Yeah, good question, because many people are using these words, this concept, biocompostable, biodegradable, but really what is mean? Because sometimes you can have confusion. Biodegradable really could be a lot of things. I mean, this bottle of plastic is biodegradable, but how many times? 1,000 years. But at the end, it can be degraded. So the concept of biodegradable is very large. Okay, so when you are comparing biodegradable and biocompostable, you have to think that whole could be biodegraded, but all cannot be compost. I mean, with this bottle of plastic, if you at the end you achieve a degradation, you cannot use it for nothing to do compost. With a biotutor twine, you can do a compost, you can do fertilizer with this. So you can reuse it for the field. So this is the difference between the product with the biodegradable. I mean, his molecule is broken down, okay, but not suitable to do compost. And the other question was difference between home compost and industrial compost. This is a key question. Home compost, I mean, in your garden, you can do your compost, because the requirement to do the compost is very low. I mean, if you reach less than 30 degrees with this temperature, with a home compost solution, you can reach your degradation and you can do your compost. With industrial compost, the requirement of temperature basically is around 60 degrees. So it's difficult for you to reach this temperature in your garden or in your farm. But yes, it's easy to reach in a compost plant. So this is a different, really. It's more easy to do it in home than industrial for the parameter of temperature. Does biodegradable twine lose properties compared to traditional one? Yes. To be honest, the properties are not exactly the same of a PP twine. It's similar, and in many cases, it's enough for many applications. So when you are moving to a polypropylene solution or a polyethylene solution for mulch, when it's the first time you move or you use, we always say, okay, step by step, you have to learn how the product is working, because it's not exactly, it could work, but you have to be maybe more carefully when you put the product or when you take it out for everything. But it's a little bit less, yeah. And this is the main point to remember. I say security. The product we design have the enough property for the application, but not exactly the same than a polypropylene one. Can that biotwine be used on any crop? Yes, because it's designed to replace a polypropylene twine. Where it can use be for tomatoes, I said before, for paper, could be for hops. I see in the United States, I visit some field of hops, and they are using cocoa fiber, and really they can move to biotwine if they want. Yeah, for many, yeah, I think it can be used in all the crop. I don't see any restriction, but just step by step, because it's a new product, and you have to have some experience about that. Hey, Atem from Tunis, my friend, how are you? Very pleased to meet you. Yeah, for sure. This technique is used for biodegradable. Yeah, for sure, 100%. And if this technique in twine, it's quite new. I mean, it's project with beginning of reality. When we're talking about mulch, it's a reality from many years ago. I mean, the level of performance of a mulch is absolutely perfect, and no fear at all using biodegradable mulch. The difference is, in the advantage on this case of the mulch, you can have the biodegradable soil certification. I mean, at the end of the crop, you don't need to touch the mulch. It's going to be the degradation is on the field, on the soil, and with the temperature in the water, the mulch is totally disappear. You don't have to collect it to take it to a waste of plant, of management. So it's the big difference is that. Peter, have you used this eco-friendly twine in application for hops? No, but we are working very hard to do some trial tests. As far as I know, and I don't know all the world. We have here in Spain a market for that, of herbs using PP twine. Germany also, it's a potential market, and for sure United States. But I'm sure our sales guys in the US can find a solution to do some trial test. But yes, it could work, 100%. Does this material need a different hook or hanger in the installation, or can be used the same as the standard one? Yeah, it could be used the same. In the use of a hook, you have to use a twist twine, okay? Because as you know, you have two quality of twine. If you are not using a hook, you can use like a flat product. But with a hook or hanger, yeah, you have to be twist to be nicely twist, and really you don't need a special hook for that. The standard one. Okay, so it seems we finished. Just to finish, as I told before, it's a project and is beginning to become a reality. Okay, and this is an interesting point of the product. We are still on alert to improve the product. We are still in search of excellence. We did a huge step with BioTutor because the results are very great. But we know we can do better, and we are working hard on this project. And with the help of our partner, our friends worldwide, I'm sure we can achieve a great goal. Thanks for your attention, and I hope I can see you very soonly in the US, in Tunis, in France. So long time without traveling. Trevor?
Yeah, and thank you everyone for attending and for the questions. Obviously, you can find us after this presentation, which will be published, but feel free to contact Miguel or myself with any other further questions, because obviously you've learned a lot during this presentation, but perhaps when you're out in your own crops or out in the field, you might have some other questions that pop up, and we would be happy to answer them for you. So thank you again for attending, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you all for attending. We will upload this video on our YouTube channel for AgriPlastics community. And for the participants, we will send you an email once edited with the link, and you could see it. Thank you again. I hope this information would be useful for you, and I hope to see you in the near future. Take care. Have a nice afternoon. Bye.